class to Kitchen 101, where we teach you how to think like a chef, how to cook, not what to cook, giving you the knowledge and comfort you need to create and modify recipes to fit your chosen way of eating and lifestyle. Today we'll be discussing the French mother sauce called Veloute. So grab yourself a pen, a paper, and your favorite skillet, because I'm Professor Kitchen and class is in session. As always, if you enjoyed this class, please give us a thumbs up. Today we continue our foray into the French mother sauces by discussing the Veloute sauce. Last time we discussed bechamel sauce. I'll put a link to that video here and at the end screen. We talked about how bechamel is an extremely versatile sauce because its flavor is so, well, generic. There's so much you can do with it. It's like a blank canvas waiting for the artist to draw the first stroke. Veloute is not quite as versatile as bechamel, but it is still very flexible in its own way. If bechamel is a blank canvas, then Veloute is also a blank canvas, but your client wants you to paint a seascape. Sure, you can do a ton of stuff with it, but there's got to be a seascape in there somewhere. You could have a desert near the ocean, or a forest on a cliff next to the ocean. You could even have an ocean on another planet, just as long as the ocean is there. That's Veloute. What makes it like that? Well, in order to answer that question, we'll need to look at what goes into a Veloute and contrast that with what goes into a bechamel. Like a bechamel, Veloute requires butter, flour, and salt. The difference is that where a bechamel uses milk, Veloute uses a light broth or stock. Such a little difference and such a major difference. The stock that you use for a Veloute is typically made from veal, chicken, or fish, and the bones are never roasted. What this does is create a sauce that is very light in both color and flavor, but not as light as bechamel. In a Veloute, you will have the flavor of whatever you made the stock from. If you use chicken, then it's going to have a chicken flavor. If you use veal, then it will have a veal flavor, etc., etc., etc. When referring to the Veloute sauce that you have made, it is customary to label it by the stock or broth that you used. For instance, seafood Veloute, chicken Veloute, or vegetable Veloute. If you want to sound really fancy, you can be very specific about the ingredients. I present you with my roasted chicken breast and duck, asparagus, and thyme Veloute. Bon appetit. Because the broth adds its flavor to the mix, you set up some constraints to what you can do with the sauce. If you used a fish stock, then you've got a fishy sauce. No way around it. If a flavor doesn't really work with fish, then it can't work in a fish Veloute. You've hooked yourself onto the fishing pole of fishiness and you're just sort of flopping about. Okay, I'll stop. The good thing about Veloute is that you can choose the flavor of the liquid. If you want a chickeny flavor to your sauce, use a chicken broth. If you want a vegetable flavor to your sauce, use a vegetable broth. So it's limited while being flexible at the same time. Here's the hard bit though. A Veloute is as much about texture as it is about color or flavor. In fact, the word Veloute means velvety. While we can get away with a 98% lump free with a bechamel, that is out of the question with a Veloute. It needs 100%. Before trying to show off this sauce, make sure that you've got the technique down pat first. Technique is everything with a Veloute. How do you make a good Veloute? The same way you get to Carnegie Hall. Practice, practice, practice. However, there's a good bit. If you've been practicing your bechamel, then you've been practicing your Veloute. The technique is virtually identical. Here's some hints to keep in mind when making a Veloute that will lead you a long way down the right path. First, use a saucier, not a frying pan. What's the difference? A frying pan will have straight sides, while a saucier has sides that are flared out to the side. This slight change makes a huge difference when trying to get a whisk into the edges of the pan. Number two, only use a 1:1:1 ratio for your sauce. With bechamel, you can increase the roux to liquid ratio to make the sauce thicker. The side effect is that you tend to have a lumpier sauce. Stick with 1 tablespoon of both flour and butter for every 1 cup of broth in your Veloute. For a thicker sauce, just let it reduce down to the thickness that you want. Number 3, pour the liquid in slowly but consistently. Don't pour in batches. If part of the roux gets wetter than other parts, it will want to clump. By pouring in slowly but steadily while whisking, you'll tend to get all that roux wet enough to prevent the lumps. Believe it or not, pouring consistently is more important than whisking consistently. So you might want to use your dominant hand to do the pouring so you get it right. Number 4, is that what we're on? Don't get too excited with the heat. Don't set your stove above a medium, and make sure you turn it down to medium-low as soon as the butter is melted. Your roux can go from a perfect golden color to a dark brown very, very quickly. Trust me on these. I have learned them the hard way. It took me 3 tries to film the clip of me making the veloute that I'm about to show you. You can even see the splatters from the failed attempts on the stove, on my pants, and on my shirt. I know of which I speak. Okay, enough babble. Let's get to it. First, we need to get things together. Go ahead and get out the butter, flour, broth, salt, pepper, saucier, whisk, and a testing spoon. Also, get out a small pot to heat up our broth, as well as a strainer to strain the sauce, and something in which to plate the sauce. Because the texture of the sauce is super important to our veloute, we're going to take out some insurance by heating the stock to a simmer on the stove before we ever try to cooking the roux. This is important because the hotter the stock is when we pour it in, then the less chance there is of the roux clumping up and making the sauce lumpy. We don't want to use a microwave for this because heating things up to a boil in the microwave can be very dangerous. Liquids can actually become superheated in the microwave without boiling. It will just be barely steaming until you bump it, and then all of a sudden the water will instantly convert from a liquid to gas explosively. It is quite dramatic and causes not only a huge mess, but can also really hurt the person who did the bumping. So when boiling things, no microwave. Okay, public service announcement over. Now that we've got our broth at a simmer, let's get to the roux. Put your pan on the stove on a medium heat and let's get it warmed up. Now, put the butter in and let it melt. Make sure to swish it around a bit to cover the whole bottom of the pan before putting anything else in. When the butter is melted, go ahead and put the flour in and start the massive stirring. Remember to keep whisking the whole time. Veloute isn't as sensitive as bechamel, but it can still burn. Remember, it is still a light sauce, so you don't want the roux to get brown. You're looking for a golden color. The real test is the smell. You should start smelling a slightly nutty smell when the flour has become sufficiently cooked through. Should take a minute or 2. Now, using a pot holder, grab your simmering stock and slowly pour it into the saucier while whisking as best as you can. This is the most important part of making the sauce, especially as you first start pouring. It's better to pour a little too quickly than a little too slowly. That's the reason we heated the broth, so that we can have that extra insurance at this critical point. After you get all of the broth in the saucier, target anything that looks a little lumpy with your whisk. Beat it like it owes you money. Once it comes up to a boil, add some salt and pepper. Now, turn it down to low and let it simmer for a few minutes to boil off some of the liquid and thicken up. This is the time to add any extra herbs or seasonings to your sauce. To test how thick your sauce is, use the back of a spoon. Dip the spoon in the sauce and run your finger across the back of it. Do you see how the sauce sticks to the spoon? The longer you let it cook, the thicker it will be. Once you think it is thick enough, taste the sauce again to see if you need to add salt or pepper. Now, pour the sauce into a gravy boat through the strainer to remove any lumps that you might have missed. Congratulations, you have made a sauce veloute.
Yeah!
We'll be going over some different tweaks you can make to a veloute to turn into other classic sauces in later classes. So be sure and click the subscribe and the bell buttons so you don't miss that. How did your veloute sauce turn out? Let me know down in the comments section below. Also, I'll have some links in the description box that you go check out for more information on Veloute sauce. Thanks for coming. I hope you have a great week. God bless. Class dismissed.